Hi, welcome back to my channel, Manga Hoarder. My name is Laura and today I'm doing a booktube tag. So today I'm doing the Boujee Booktuber Tag. This is created by Book Olive and I was tagged to do this by Sue's Book Nook. I think that this has something to do with, well, I can tell from the questions. I don't know what the word means, Boujee, I don't know. I hadn't heard of it before, but the questions all have something to do with money and the value of books. I've been liking watching everyone's answers to this. I feel like my answers are quite different, particularly because I kind of have two minds about books. Not only am I, just sort of a regular reader of, regular novels and nonfiction, prose works, I also am a huge and avid fan, collector, and reader of comics, particularly manga. So my view of books is different depending on what I'm buying or reading, and as I go through this I'm probably going to have to answer for both of those things because they're so different in some cases. But I think I'm just going to get into it and we will see how this goes. So question number one is, what is your average monthly budget for books? As I've watched a few people, nobody has actually said that they have a budget for books. Everyone says they don't budget for books, which seems really odd to me because if I didn't budget for books, I would only buy books and then I wouldn't be able to buy anything else. So I do have a budget for books. It's not sort of, or the way that I manage my budget is not, like I don't have a very set number for my budget, but what I do is I keep afloat, and basically after I pay all my bills and all of my savings accounts, at the end of my paycheck I will throw whatever's left over into my book account. I have a separate savings account that I use for that, and then as that amount grows I can always buy as many books as will fit into whatever dollar amount I have in that savings account. I do try to keep it around $200 in case there's like a sale or some event comes up so I can afford books. And both my manga and my other all kinds of books come out of that budget. So I couldn't say what my actual budget is because it's not really a strict budget in that sense. It's more like a strict bank account, and so it can vary, but I think probably close to around $200 a month. Number two is, what's the most you've ever spent in a bookstore? A lot. I think probably before I even go any further than this, I do have to say, for one, I'm Canadian, so there's an exchange rate, which means that my price numbers are going to be higher than someone who does this video in the States, for one. And second of all, books are priced higher here, so books are more expensive here. So that all, like, taking into consideration, I prioritize book buying. It's sort of my major hobby, buying books, so I spend a lot. And it varies depending on what kind of bookstore I'm in. Like if I'm just in a traditional, big box bookstore, I would say I probably haven't spent more than maybe $100 on books. Because I generally, like if I'm just buying novels or whatever, like they're more of a treat, I guess. They're not something that I buy a whole lot of. So I'm not necessarily going to the store to just buy books because I'm in the mood to read books. I usually am going to the store because I'm in the mood to read a specific book. So I don't normally go there and just like take armloads of books home. However, I will sometimes take armloads of comics home, or manga home, and they are also sold in those big box bookstores. Big box, though, usually means full price, and so there are so many other ways that you can get better deals on those things, so I will usually go to different places to buy those. Including my LCS, local comic shop, will discount significantly over the regular price. The shop that I favor, my favorite shop here in the city, gives discounts their books. Actually, they sell their books for the American price but in Canadian dollars, so it's actually a significant discount, so that's sort of where I would prefer to shop. I will buy manga at those other stores as well, but yeah, for the most part I spend a little bit less in like bigger bookstores. But in a comic book store I have been known to drop $400 at one of those fancy sales that I go to. I've been known to drop $400 or $500. It's not something that I do frequently though, but yeah, I am willing to spend a lot more on books than just about anything else that I buy. Number 3 is, are you willing to pay full price for a new release, or will you wait for a coupon or sale? If I had to wait for a coupon, I would never buy a book because I don't think I've ever seen a coupon for a book. So definitely not couponing, but I definitely will look around for better prices for like novels, because I don't buy very much. I will normally, and I'm usually looking for something specific, I usually will just buy what the cover price is wherever I am. So like I'm in the mood to read whatever, I will just go to the bookstore, I'll buy that one book, because in general I would say that I don't buy a lot of novels in a year. This year has been a little bit different in that I did that silly thing on Book Outlet, but I had a fever that day, and yeah. So I can kind of forgive myself. And then I will buy books just sort of randomly at like secondhand sales, just sort of without any intention. I will just buy them because they're cheap and they might be interesting. But normally, like if I'm going to buy, or if I'm going to pay full price, it's because I'm looking for something specific. I'm not worried about what the cost is. I just want to read that thing right now. So that's basically how things work. As for manga, I would prefer to get a discount, so I do try to shop when things are on sale. It's not always possible because the way that manga works is that, particularly with the small publishers, you might only get, 100 print run on something. I'm going to pay and pre-order at that like full price because I want that thing. Because if I don't get my order in immediately, I might not get it at all. There's no chance later for a discount. So I'm not, it just sort of depends on the type of thing that I am buying, whether or not I care about a discount. But I care about discounts. I would prefer to buy everything at a discount because it stretches my dollar further and I can buy more books then. But there's definitely times when I would buy something for full price. Number 4 is, would you rather buy one new book or several less expensive used copies? I love used books. I think it's a great market. I don't think that it hurts the original value of the book. I don't think that you're not supporting an artist or an author by not buying their book brand new. I actually think it doesn't actually enter into that equation at all. That book has already supported that author because it has been bought once. Now it is in a new market, and so that it doesn't even enter into the equation of whether or not you're supporting an author or not. So I don't think that it's a problem at all to buy new books or to buy used books. And I love buying used books, but if I'm going to buy used books, I think that they need to be significantly decreased in price. None of this gouging because it's in the second-hand market. Comics in particular, the second that they go out of print, people will try and resell things at like 100 to 500 times the market value of what that thing is. Particularly with manga. Manga is not worth that much. As far as I'm concerned, there is nothing logical to that markup price except for that some people are willing to pay it, and so you can continue to ask people to spend $400 or $500 on a single volume that should have really cost about $2 or $3 to pick up. So there's some major gouging out there. As far as I'm concerned, as long as the price is significantly discounted, I would be happy to have only secondhand books. I do love to support the artists. I certainly want to support the artists. I want the industry to be really strong, and so I want to continue to buy and put my money into this industry that I love. But yeah, I have absolutely no problems with secondhand. Although my collection and my buying is really a mix of both things. Number 5 is, what do you think is a reasonable price for new hardback, paperback, or ebook? A reasonable price is what people are willing to buy or willing to pay. A reasonable price is what people, the authors, the illustrators, the publishers, as long as the people involved in creating that book can make a living wage, I think that's a reasonable price. Certainly there is gouging, like I've said, in the reseller market. People who have not been involved at all in the creation process, have not been involved in the publishing, in the editing, in the marketing. There's nothing, there's no involvement. All they do is have this thing in hand. These people are charging exorbitant prices for material that really shouldn't be. So I think that the resellers market is actually a problem. But as far as I'm concerned, the prices that are on books are fine, as long as people are willing to pay for it. As far as ebooks are concerned though, you can watch my video on why I don't buy ebooks. Certainly I like ebooks as a form, but I think that they are absolutely stealing from the reader, because they are licenses, and in I bet 99% of the case, there is no ownership involved. There are a couple of instances where there has been ownership involved. As far as I know, they're usually to platforms rather than to actual end users. There are a couple of licenses where you can read them, where you can actually retain ownership of it, but only ownership through the use of a particular app. So you would continue to own that thing, but you'll never be able to transfer it or update it or anything, or take it even off of that device that you have it downloaded on. So there's sort of like some slight ownership in certain license cases. Kind of. You have to kind of read carefully at those things, but there's an absolute significant amount of gouging that goes on with digital licensing and digital property distribution, and that the user should never have to pay more than $1 to use a title that has been digitally published. However, I don't mind if it continues to stay as it is, as long as maybe rather than trying to fix the pricing, we should make it maybe legal or a requirement of all publishers that every single physical book needs to have a digital publication, and every digital publication needs to be freely distributed through the public library system. Right now, as far as I know, there are a lot of publishers who are actually pulling their publications out of or not allowing license agreements with platforms that distribute through libraries, because they don't want their materials to be distributed freely. They think that that's going to cause a decrease in the amount of revenue that they actually gain from it, but actually I think it really harms them. And it also kind of creates this sort of elitism to who can access information, and it also creates because you are kind of closing that door, it creates a significant problem with illegal distribution of digital and physical materials. If you made all this material always legally available, then, you aren't actually hurting the sale of it. People are still going to continue to buy material. The majority of library users, if you actually look at data, are also book buyers. It's not one or the other, and it's not people who are going to completely turn off of buying books just because they can get it at the library. But it is going to make people maybe a little more informed, and maybe even willing to spend a little bit more on books because they already love a book and they want to have ownership of it. And so I think it actually it's not going to harm the market at all. And I think that if we took that piece away, then the rest of the cost of publication doesn't matter at all. People will continue to buy books if they can, but everyone will still have full access to media, and I think that's really all that's important, in my opinion. Number 6, is a signed book worth more to you? How about a first edition? A signed book is worth more to me, is only sort of, I guess, yeah, yes, it is. I'm not going to necessarily pick up a book and spend more because it's signed. I'm not collecting things based on that, but certainly, like if I go to a talk or reading and I get my book signed, like that's going to be more to me because there's sort of a sentimental or, a memory attached to that particular item. And certainly, as far as the resale market, as far as collectability and the value of things, sort of like the actual monetary value of things, having an author's signature on that material will increase its value. You know, like, so if I ever want to resell it, of course, you know, having an autograph on that material is probably going to give it a slight edge. But, you know, if for example, it's a really popular material and, you know, thousands of this book have been signed, it's not going to actually be more valuable than any other of the publication. It's only when it's like very limited, when the author only ever signed like 2 copies in their entire life. It's only sort of in those situations where the monetary level of or the cost or the price of that book actually kind of increases on the market. So like it kind of does. But as far as like me caring whether or not a book is signed, not really. I don't really care, except for that I went to an event and I saw that person and it was a nice experience, and, you know, here's my memory, it's in this book. So that's sort of a nice thing. As far as a first edition, as far as manga is concerned, manga in English does not matter. There is no such thing as increased value in English translated manga, because it is not actually first edition. There's no such thing as first edition in translated manga. However, you can get first edition in original language manga, and it might be cool to, you know, get a first edition of some you know, maybe like Astro Boy or something like really popular and kind of iconic. That would be great. I would love it. I have a first edition, I guess, of Dr. Slump, but I don't really, because it was originally published in the magazine. I don't have the magazine. So like, kind of like, there certainly is sort of a level of value as far as the market is concerned. I think the English language market is confused about what value is. Not in manga. The first edition does not matter in English. But as far as in prose, I'm not as attached to prose as a lot of booktube is, but maybe if, I had a Moby Dick first edition, I'd be super excited about it because I could sell it and get more comics. So I think in that way, yeah, it would be more valuable to me just because it's worth more. The next question, number 7, is what is your most valuable book, sentimental or actual value? I have one prop. I was going to go and find another. I have a book that my father gave to me. It was his childhood book. It's just a Mickey Mouse story from his childhood, and from the 1940s. So it's very cute. So sentimental, yes, it is. But as far as I'm concerned, the most valuable book that I have, and it certainly isn't the most valuable, like it's not even the most I've paid for a book, but it is the most valuable book that I own, in my opinion, and that is this one, which is the Medieval and Renaissance Treatise on the Arts of Painting with original texts and English translations by Mrs. Mar P. Merrifield. It's kind of starting to look a little bit rough. When I bought it, it was the most expensive book I had bought up to that point, and it really is just, kind of tedium on the process of like mixing colors and what colors mean and color application. Yeah, so here's like a chapter that's called On Making Greens from Copper and from the Juices of Herbs in Various Manners. It's just sort of was an unusual book. I needed it to write a paper. If I recall, it cost me like close to $70 when I picked it up new, and it was a big deal, let's just say, when I picked it up. And I, even though it's not something that I would necessarily flip through, it is a pretty tedious read. It's also kind of nostalgic. So definitely I would say this is my most valuable, although I have other things certainly in my collection, particularly in my manga collection, which people sell online for crazy prices. I have a couple volumes in my collection that I've seen listed for $500, $600, $700 online. So I have those things, but I also don't believe that as a value. I still think that the value is really the price on the book. And this one, I don't know that it really has improved in value, but I still feel like this is the thing that has cost me the most. Number 8. Will you pay more for a cover edition you like better? Why do I have to choose? I would pay... Would I pay more? I wouldn't pay a lot more, but I would also... Yeah. But I also wouldn't get rid of the cover I didn't like. Particularly in manga. Manga is a collection for me. I'm a collector. You know, like I just put down a significant amount of money to pre-order the new release of the hardcover special edition of Magic Knight Rayearth. I have 3 other editions of it. I don't need another edition. So I certainly will just continue to buy this series as long as I can continue to afford it in all of its incarnations, because that's sort of what collecting is. And so yeah, I definitely would do that. You know, as for, you know, a lot of the prose that I continue to hang on to, I get rid of a lot of the novels after I read them. Most of the prose that I continue to hang on to are classics. You know, you can get classics you can read classics for free. They're public domain now. You know, you don't have to pay to read classics. But I would rather read them in a paper form. And I would rather read them in particular editions. And, you know, the prettier the better. But yeah, so I definitely would pay for it. If something is, you know, nominally different, but the slightly more expensive edition is the slightly more beautiful edition, then I'm going to take the slightly more beautiful edition. I'm more inclined to read something if I think it's beautiful than if I think it looks dull or boring or is cut wrong or has, you know, bad font or has the, you know, Save Us All from the movie poster. I don't go to movies. I don't want their picture on the book that I'm reading. So yeah, I definitely would spend more on a better edition. Number 9 is, what physical characteristics does a good quality book have? Physical characteristics. The pages are attached to the spine. Somehow. I think that's pretty much it. There's pages. Yeah, you know, there's definitely things that I like about books, but it doesn't necessarily mean quality. You know, as far as I'm concerned, the quality is whether or not it's still, you can still read it. You know, if it doesn't break down. So if I can still read it, you know, 50 years from now, then it's probably a pretty good quality book. You know, as far as comics are concerned, you know, manga, I love reading manga in little floppy paperbacks, and I love the particular very generic size that most manga are published in because it fits in my little hands. But there are some really beautifully published, you know, hardcover books. You know, take for example just newly published Po-Clan by Moto Hagio, but it's still surprisingly light, you know, despite the fact that it's got you know, really nice smooth pages. This one even could be published more beautifully and more higher quality, but it does have kind of like the defining best feature of a hardcover book in that the pages are sewn in. I think that's really essential for a hardcover book to have the pages sewn in rather than glued in, because you don't want the pages popping out as you read them. I like very smooth pages. I like a matte finish. I don't particularly like glossy pages. I don't like it when there's an interspersing of glossy and matte pages throughout my book. As far as novels concerned, I like wide margins, slightly bigger spacing because I get a little dizzy when I'm reading a lot of text, and I don't want to have to use my finger to, you know, be able to follow along, so I just need a little bit more spacing. That would really be helpful. I do like things that are a little bit smaller in my hand so that I can take them with me, but that's not necessarily a quality. That's just sort of something I like. I do think that hardcovers are nice in sort of a chip. I do like it when the hardcover has more of a canvas finish. This is a glossy, kind of like a paper wrap finish. I like the canvas finish. and I like when the books themselves have sort of debossing. I think that's really attractive. I think the dust jacket usually detracts from the physical attractiveness of a book, but I think that it adds a protection to the book, so I think the dust jacket is sort of essential. I don't care for the deckled edge. I don't think it adds value, and I think that because as far as I'm concerned, things, particularly like if you're archiving something that has an edge like that, which can be damaged by touching it because there are so many unconventional shapes on the edge, I think that, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't lend to a long-lasting publication. But, you know, things that last a long time, as long as they last a long time and I can read them again in the future, that's good enough publication for me. You know, I have lots of books that my father gave to me, many of which are, you know, 50 to 60, 70 years old. I can read all of them fine. I don't have any concerns about opening them and cracking the spine. That's really what it is. If a book will survive a long time, then it's good enough. And number 10 is, if you won the lottery, what bookish things would you do with the money? I have thought about this a lot because, you know, when you are really have to keep tightly within a budget, you think about that instance where you wouldn't have to keep tightly to a budget because you have sort of an unlimited amount of funds. I'm just sort of assuming that lottery means I have an unlimited amount of funds that won't run out. Let's just assume that that's what that means. I have other benevolent interests rather than bookish, so I probably wouldn't be benevolent as a, like, you know, donating to bookish organizations or whatever. I have other interests that I probably would be interested in on that scale, because I heard a lot of people talk about that. Mine would be entirely selfish. I would quit my work, because who wouldn't, and I would go back to school full-time and pursue all of the education. All of it. Particularly, of course, starting with learning Japanese so that I can read comics, because that is a very bookish thing to do, is to be able to read in another language. That's my, like, current, you know, self-study that I do anyway, but I would love to be able to do that full-time. That'd be an amazing thing. But, you know, since I've been in school, even when I was in school, I was looking at ways of how can I stay in school? How can I stay there and just continue to learn and read and study and research? And, you know, I learned that my school allows free education after 65. I am so ready to do that. You know, constantly I'm looking at, like, what's going on at university, what kind of programs I could be taking. That is what I would do with my money, is go back to school, and that's pretty much as bookish as I need to be. Bonus. The bonus question is, give us an image, actual or mental, of your dream library. My dream library is just a lot of books. It's really all I care about, is I want a lot of books, which I already have. I just want more books, and I want my house or my space or my library to be equipped to manage having as many books as I want. That's really all I care about. But I think, you know, for myself, if I had, like, my ideal, I would go for something like Rococo architecture, very deep oaks mixed with marble, a lot of, like, inlay and scroll work and, you know, quatrefoil and pilaster and certainly a mezzanine, and yeah, I just think that overstuffing the space too, you know, you can have, I just really love overstuffing. I love the look of, you know, these heavy dark oak tables in these sort of severe, like, dimly lit lamped spaces with people studying and having just piles of books, to the point where you almost don't know what's in those piles because they don't fit on the shelves, and those people are using all of those books, and that seems wonderful. I just really love kind of like old, dank, dusty, kind of dimly lit, a little bit creepy, a little bit creaky, and overstuffed. That's sort of my ideal, which is I'm on the way. So there you go. Anyway, that's it. It's not normal. I guess it's not what everyone else would picture, but I just really love that vision. I don't think very practical, but I love the vision of it. Anyway, I think that's it. That's definitely all the questions. So thanks so much to Sue's Book Nook for tagging me. I'm going to tag a couple of people down below because I'm not sure who to tag at the moment. But I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was interesting to you. Let me know your thoughts on those questions. If you want to do this tag yourself, feel free to go ahead and do it. And I think that's it. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.